Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Uday Sommun, and I welcome you all to this webinar organized by my team Antaranga under the banner Jivantaranga on a topic, a detailed discussion on and awareness on COVID-19. Antaranga is a social awareness team which is actively involved in the betterment of the society. As a guest speaker to address this session, we have with us Dr. Matthew Verghese. Sir, I am humbled to welcome you to this session. I welcome you on behalf of all the participants attending this session. To begin with, I shall start by introducing Dr. Verghese to you all. Although he is a man who needs no introduction, with due respect, I shall share some information that I have gathered about him. Dr. Matthew Verghese is a public health expert and a veteran orthopedic surgeon. Being the head of the orthopedics department, he runs India's last and only polio ward at St. Stephen Hospital of Delhi. Microsoft founder and philanthropist Bill Gates has called him as one of the 5 heroes saving the world for having dedicated his life for the polio eradication in India. Besides being a polio warrior, Dr. Verghese has a different take on handling the COVID and segments that timeline to manage it meticulously by documenting every patient that he has handled so far. So, with this brief, I once again welcome to you this webinar, sir. Sir, on carefully monitoring, we were able to recognize the demand from the public to have an uninterrupted and a detailed explanation about COVID, especially from you. This itself aspired us to keep the title as it laid out now. To cater to the public need, I now request you to take over for the uninterrupted session for the next 1 hour approximately. In the later part, we shall have a Q&A session. I hope if everything seems good, we shall go ahead with the uninterrupted session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. First of all, greetings to everyone in Karnataka that are part of this session. I'm really honored to be here, and anything which is there to save lives, I don't say no. And when the request came from Prafulla, I said, no worries, I'll do it. But I wish I knew Kannada. I wish I could communicate with you in Kannada. But unfortunately, I do not know Kannada. And I will not be able to communicate that well with some of those people around who are listening. So first question I have for the people that are around, would you like to speak only in English, or do you want me to speak in Hindi, or English and Hindi mixed? I'm comfortable, equally comfortable with English and Hindi.
Sir, it's your
So
choice.
no worries.
It's your choice. You can convey both in English and Hindi. However, as a precaution, we will convert this session into Kannada as well, so that we will be reaching rural areas of the Karnataka as.
Then I can continue to speak in English. Is it
yes,
okay?
Yes, sir. Of course, you can.
Okay. So first of all, thank you very much. And many of me wonder, what is this orthopedic surgeon who does polio surgeries and reconstructive surgeries doing in the role of a physician treating corona? I am not treating corona patients in the hospital. I'm actually only guiding patients and getting them to access good care at the right time. So my role is as a guide, accessing care for people that need care. So that is a very important understanding that you must have. How are you treating corona patients? What do you know about corona? These are some of the questions that some of the physicians have been asking. And therefore, I thought this clarification is important. I'm not treating in a hospital setting patients with corona. In a home setting, I'm guiding them. So if I can guide them, and if I empower you with the knowledge and skills required to guide people at homes, this whole rush to hospitals will go down. The need for having oxygen delivery systems, the need for ICUs, all that can be reduced. And one of the community outreach programs that we have here in Delhi is run by an organization called ASHA. So one of them, Kiran Martin, She spoke to me over some need for some oxygen concentrators. And she did not know about this timeline sequence that I was doing. When I told her about this, she said, "Tell me how you do it." So I sent some of my videos and I explained to her how I do it. About a month down the line, when I called her back, she said, "You know, doctor, until recently, we had a tough time getting beds for our patients from the slums. And I know how difficult it is because I worked in the slums. With my friend Gulshan Sethi, we used to go to a slum every weekend, sit on the floor of a hut and do patient care, including antenatal care. Though I was an orthopedic surgeon, I was doing that. So I know what happens in the slums." She told me we were really desperate to have oxygen supplies. We were desperate to get them into hospitals and admissions. But after we started your protocol, hardly anyone needs it. So we're amazed that my need for oxygen and oxygen concentrators have gone down. So therefore, when Prafulla called me up requesting me, I thought maybe it will be a game changer there too. And I would like at the outset to request you if you can document this and find that what I'm saying is true, it'll be a game changer globally. You will be the role models for the world, WHO and other organizations to copy. What you do is every call that you receive, I'm selling this right in the beginning, every call that you receive for somebody having a symptom like corona or having a tested positive, you get the detailed diary recording. Note it down, and Prafulla and his team can compile it together, put it on an Excel spreadsheet, see which day what symptom, which day what happened, how many of them became all right without problems, how many of them had problems, how many went to the hospital, in the hospital what happened, which day they went on what oxygen level, what was the saturation, what was their full sequence. The reason I'm saying this, if it can make a difference to the community, it is worth copying. If it can be done by people that are not healthcare workers in the hospital, but community workers and community volunteers, it will be a game changer. So I request all of you to be part of this. Coming back to my role here, and I've been giving this time and again. I first heard about the disease, reading about it in a magazine, which is a scientific magazine, a very popular scientific journal. And if you have an article in Nature, you're considered an ultimate scientist. So Nature reported an unknown virus in November 2019. I read about it and I was fascinated. But I was also scared. Supposing this becomes something like Ebola, where the kind of precautions required, the kind of mortality it caused among the healthcare workers and the family people was scary. So this report in November, gradually increasing reports in December. Nature is a magazine which comes weekly. So the report was followed by what is happening in Wuhan in China regularly. So the cases exploded in that small hospital and then really spread from that Wuhan market. And by December end, they had identified the virus. December end, they knew the characteristics of the virus. And in the January edition, January second week, they had the announcement of the genes and the full genomic sequence of the virus. So in such a short time, between November and January, they had the genome sequence of the virus out there in the open world for everyone to see. And that was fascinating. And then the number of cases going up in the other parts of the world. So in February, we had our case in India. And By March 11th, the WHO declared it as a global pandemic. And then on March 22nd, we had a lockdown. When the lockdown happened, it was very clear this kind of a lockdown pan-India, as announced by the Prime Minister, is a once in a millennium occurrence. It doesn't happen often. Last one was 2018 in 1918 at the influenza pandemic. So we're not likely to have this kind of lockdown. So I thought, since I'm sitting at home, I'll maintain a diary. And my diary notings continued, and they're still continuing. And this is today's noting, 23rd of May. Date-wise, I've been entering what I have been doing and what I have been seeing. And initially, there were hardly any cases. And as months went by and the lockdown was opening up, we started looking at it more seriously. By end of April, I had a WHO project to look at the impact of COVID-19 on persons with disabilities. So here was I doing as a principal investigator looking into the impact of COVID on persons with disability. And since I was doing this research project for WHO, I was serious about understanding the disease. And I kept reading articles on that, kept reading the social impact of it, kept reading the biological impact of it, kept reading the epidemiology of it, kept reading the pathology of it, the physiology. An advantage was there to me because fortunately, because the pandemic was declared, every article in every journal was freely downloadable. So you could read about it full text. Otherwise, when you want to look at a topic, usually you only see an abstract. When you want to go to a full text, either you have to be a member of a library which has access to that journal, or you have to pay for it. Here, without paying, without going to the library, sitting in my office, sitting in my hospital, or sitting in my home, I can access it. Fascinating. And I kept reading the articles. And I kept looking at patients. Do their symptoms and presentations match what I'm reading? And I kept noting down things. And I found this article which talked about these many patients had cough, these many patients had fever, these many patients had running nose, these many patients had problems of smell, these many patients had loose motions, these many patients had body ache. So there were so many patterns that were described. That made me think, let me also follow up my patients using a calendar noting. And this is what I did. This is the current diary which is going on. If you notice this, dates are written for every patient. And against every date, a new symptom or new thing that happened has been noted down. And the numbers have now, they are crossed 250. I'm still continuing with that. And by August, in my notings, I realized there is a pattern to this disease. At that time, by around 6th, 7th day, from the first symptom, patients would become more serious. They would have breathlessness. They would be getting to a hospital. They would be getting admitted. By 8th day, they're admitted. Those that become serious. But majority don't become serious. 80% don't become serious. They're all right. But the 20% that become serious usually do so on the 8th day from the first symptom. But there was a large number that did not become so serious, but they were moderately affected around 6th day or so. And when I started looking at the literature, and those days I used to ask them, where do you think you got the infection from? Oh, I went to this engagement. I went to this birthday party. I went to this meeting and I got it from that meeting. And I was in a car and the person who was traveling with in the car got it. So I could identify them, and invariably the disease spread to them from one person they identified, and the usual time was 5 days. And then I started asking persons, did you go anywhere on that day? Oh, how do you know, sir? No, I'm just asking you, did you go on that day? Yes, sir, I went with that person in that car, and 2 days down the line, they told me he's positive, and 5 days down the line, we are positive. So you can be infective plus minus 2 days of that 5 day from the exposure. What was the literature talking about? Talked about the incubation period varied from 3 days to 14 days. But what was I seeing? Almost all, barring few exceptions, were about 5 days incubation. What is the incubation period? From the time of entry of the virus in your body till you manifest the first symptom is called the incubation. So what happens? When the virus enters your body, it enters a cell in the throat and becomes a part of the cell. And after becoming a part of the cell, it takes over the metabolism of the cell and starts to multiply. That's its only role. Enters a cell, becomes part of the cell, uses the body cell metabolism to multiply. 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16, 16 to 32, 32 to 64, 64 to 128, in that doubling. Within 2 days or 3 days, there are millions of viruses there. Millions. Therefore, you suddenly have from a single virus, but then in one little droplet of the aerosol that goes into your respiratory tract, there may be 500 viruses. 500 into 2 is 1000. 1000 into 2 is doubling time is 2000, 4000, it goes like that. It is in millions in no time. More the viral load, easier it is for it to multiply and create a problem. But is the body a silent watcher? No. Body initially cannot make out as long as in the cell, but once it comes out to infect more cells, then the body recognizes there is a foreign invasion. An invader has come in to attack that. But for attacking, you need missiles, you need firepower. How do you attack? The body generates antibodies. So there are two terms. One is antigen, which is the virus, which generates the antibody and helps generate the antibody, provoke the antibody. And the antibody which is formed by the body to fight the antigen. So the body generates the antibody. It takes about 3-4 days. So the first 3 days, no problem. By 4th, 5th day, the antibodies attack the viruses and start killing them. So there is fire killing them. I'm explaining in layman's terms so that you can understand. So when there is fire, there is fever. Exactly what happens in the body. When there is a fight between antibodies and there is antigen, the virus being killed, there are chemicals released which are known as cytokines. These cytokines, they are the ones that cause fever. These cytokines are the ones body energy is consumed, they cause body aches. They cause sore throat. They cause pain in the throat. They cause headache. They cause all the symptoms that you see as the first symptom caused by the viremia. So at this stage, on the 4th, 5th day, millions of viruses are circulating in your blood. At that time, body antibodies are also circulating and fight is going on. And killing is going on of the viruses. It is this fight and the viremia which causes the first few symptoms. So that in the previous surge, previous wave, you could identify the day when you got exposed, identify the day when you had the first symptom. In this wave, nobody knows where they got the symptom from. Sir, I don't know. I didn't go anywhere. We don't know. So I stopped asking that question, where did you go? I only now to find out, my job is to find out what was your first symptom. Invariably, a human being remembers what is his dominant symptom. He will remember fever. So ask them, when did you have fever? Sir, last week. So when you're talking to people in the community, don't listen to the weak business. Doesn't work. 1 or 2 days here or there can make a difference between life and being on a ventilator. So this 1 or 2 days has to be zeroed in on. Don't say, not last week. Which date? So, sir, Wednesday. No, tell me what day was Wednesday? What date was Wednesday? Sir, it was the 10th of April. Okay, were you all right? Yeah, I was all right before that. Are you sure you don't have any body ache or any cold? No, I had a little, running nose. Okay, that becomes your first day. Were you all right before that? The previous day, I had done this cleaning of the house because we are expecting some guests and we worked hard. And end of the day, I was exhausted. I had a little body ache. It's not the cold that was the first symptom, it is the body ache. So from 10th of April, your first day has moved on to 8th of April. 2 days. That can mean a difference between being on a ventilator or off a ventilator. I understood it only as I was following up these cases. How many of them went on to the ventilator? How many of them got admitted? I knew. And I also was following up because I knew no physician knows about these diseases. It's a new disease. To him also, to me also. He's also a doctor, I'm also a doctor. He can also follow clinical science, I can also follow. So I can follow up and read and be as skilled in this as the physician. They're also learning, I'm also learning. So I was not having any pretensions on this. It was very clear my understanding is growing by following up patients meticulously, case by case, day by day. So once I know the first symptom, so I put it down and write down all the details of the first symptom. So first symptom, like this patient here I have, is lethargy. Second symptom is fever. How much was the fever? I asked 102. Second day was 13th. He had lethargy continuing. Fever was 100 degrees. I took a paracetamol, he says. Okay. 13th, 14th. How are you? Oh, 99 fever. 100 went for a little while in the afternoon and became all right. Any other symptom? No other symptom. In the evening, on 15th, when I talked to him in the evening, I lost my sense of smell. Oh, I noted down. Anosmia. 15th, do you have anything? No, I'm all right. Nothing there. 16th, anything? No, nothing. 17th, anything? No, nothing. 18th, anything? Nothing. So you're fine. You don't have to have anything. You've crossed the 5-day period and you've had no symptoms after that, you're fine. The body antibodies have eliminated the virus from your system and you're clear. Are you infective? Perhaps yes. Because you still have some viruses. Your infectivity is maximum on the day of your first symptom. It has nothing to do with your positivity. Infectivity is based on your symptom day. Maximum 1 day before. Day of a symptom is a fight going on. So 1 day before, the day of the symptom, and 1 day after you're infected. You're also infective 2 days before, but not to that extent. You're also infective 2 days after, but not to that extent. 1 day before is the peak. On the day, also there in a high number, but subsequently also you're infected. So if you start isolating from your family members, you should continue to isolate because you may not have infected them. You must isolate right from the day of first symptom. When you think you have corona, assume you have corona. And then I start isolating. Mask is the best. And I'll talk about the mask a little later. So this is what you have to think of. So this person, 12th April fever 102, and then on 17th April is nothing. I tell him you're a corona warrior, be happy. But watch out for 5 more days. Why? Few viruses may be hanging around somewhere. And they can still provoke a reaction. So I tell them, watch out for 5 more days. If you're fine, you're happy. So he is fine. Even today he's fine. So I've cleared him. Okay. Whereas the other patient that I'm following up, what do I find? I find that on the 5th day, sir, I have 100 temperature. Oh, if you have 100 temperature, that's a sign of the disease taking a more dangerous turn. And why does this happen and how does this happen? So normally the antibodies eliminate the viruses, and they took samples from patients every day in patients that were infected. So there's a paper on this. Every day sample from the nostrils and from the throat. You get a specimen and check it for viruses. So they found that first day of symptom, there were living viruses. Second day, there were viruses. Third day, there were viruses from the first symptom. But ninth day onwards, from the first symptom, they found there were no living viruses that could be cultured, which means the body immunity antibodies have eliminated the virus on the ninth day from the first symptom. So then what happens on the fifth, ninth day from the infection and fourth day from the first symptom? So what happens? On the fifth day from the first symptom or 10th day from infection, from exposure, you have a new set of symptoms. And what are the symptoms? Three key symptoms. Three key symptoms are: one is fever, which becomes high grade if it was low grade. But if you keep taking paracetamol for 99-degree fever, or you keep taking paracetamol for body aches, you may mask the fever that comes up. Always all community workers are there. Let me share with you. Nature is brilliantly designed. And this virus infection must have told all of you how little doctors know about viruses and what they do to your body. Nobody anticipated this, but it has exposed that we know very little. So body systems are beautifully designed. It has taken millions of years of evolution to have this, or a genius of a god creating this. But that genius has designed it beautifully. What happens? We are, from the classification, mammals, the highest creation. And unique characteristic that we have is our body temperature is regulated perfectly at 98.4. And that goes on till you're 90, 92, 95, 100. It's the same thing. 98.4. Tell me one refrigerator which has that perfect control. No. Tell me one air conditioner that can maintain that perfect control. No. When you have an infection, this goes up. Why did nature design the system like that? It is because the ability to fight infections is better in a higher body temperature. So all fever is not dangerous. All fever is not harmful. Fever is beneficial to the body to fight infection. So then why do you give paracetamol? Doctors keep giving paracetamol. They give paracetamol if the same thing which is meant to help you goes beyond a limit. And what is the limit set? 100.5 to 101 degrees. So don't give paracetamol all fevers. Only when it crosses 100.5, you give paracetamol. That's one important message that I have. So on the fifth day, if you're taking paracetamol, it will show only 99, whereas actually it is going higher. It is controlled by paracetamol. So what do I tell my patient? Don't take paracetamol after the fourth day. Community message. Timelines. First symptom identified clearly. Then on the fourth day of the first symptom, stop taking paracetamol for body ache or anything. Sir, body ache बहुत ज़्यादा हो जाए तो मैं कहा no, avoid, manage without it. Just take rest and then see what's happening. Fever comes up, 100 plus, significant. 98.7, 98. Don't worry, relax. Watch it for the next day also. 100-degree fever? Yes. Now what is this cause of fever? Is it infection? You said the antibody is eliminated. Yes. So what has happened? What has happened is, for some reason, the antibodies that are generated, they identify the viruses. How do they identify the viruses? By that little crown-like thing that you see on the images of the virus. That is known as the spike protein. The virus is identified by the body by the spike protein. And the spike protein is attacked and the virus is killed. This antibody has been trained to recognize the virus by the spike. But in our body, lining the blood vessels of our lungs, there are a few cells which have a structure very similar to the spike protein. And the antibodies recognize them as viruses and attack them. When they attack them, there is release of cytokines. And you have the cytokine shower. These are chemicals that produce inflammation, which, if you have an abscess, there's swelling, isn't it? The swelling is because of cytokines. The pain is because of cytokines. The pus is because of the fight. All that is because of the fight between body and infection. So this body, which is supposed to protect you from viruses, kill the viruses, it starts attacking its own. It's an autoimmune response. Autoimmune, attacking oneself. Immunity is the immune fighting body infections. That causes damage to the lining of blood vessels in the lungs, and they get damaged, their smoothness is gone, and when in a normal situation, coagulation doesn't happen in the blood vessels, except in some special situation, people with some disease. So here you have blood clotting in these. When blood clots in these veins and capillaries of the lungs, no blood can flow. If no blood can flow, there's no oxygen. Because oxygenation happens of the blood flowing within the lungs because of exchange of oxygen between the capillaries and your air spaces in the lungs. In this particular situation, you have no flow of blood and therefore no oxygenation. So all those areas where the blood vessels are clotted, there is no flow. So depending on how much of the lung is involved, you have no flow of blood. So if you have no flow, then surely your oxygenation stops. There's no blood flow. Yes. So when does this happen? It takes a little while for the blood flow to stop and to the entire lung. As soon as the coagulation happens, blood flow is stopped. But it increases slowly. 10%, 20%, 30%, 40% of the lung is involved. So you have two lungs, like two kidneys. So when you donate a kidney, what happens? You go into kidney failure? No. You can manage with one kidney. So similarly, you take off one lung, you go into damage to oxygenation. No, you can still manage 100% oxygen. And that is an understanding which has to be. So for the oxygen saturation to drop, you need to have about 2/3 of your lung to be damaged. So when you have these digital sensors, which you give to people, they're checking their sense. Oh, sir, mera to it is 96%. Sit at home. Doctor also is happy, sit at home. Till 50% of the lung is affected. Still it is 100%. Nothing wrong. So you feel good and you're sitting at home. Sensor 96%. More lung is involved. 2/3 when it reaches, that is the level at which the body cannot compensate. So sitting, nothing happens. When he starts walking, the demand for oxygen goes up, and therefore you have saturation going down. So this 96%, sir, it fluctuates between 88 and 91. I don't know what to do. Go come to the hospital. But when you reach the hospital, 2/3 of your lung is already damaged. That is why I tell people, don't wait at home with the drop in oxygen saturation. You have to come before that. You have to start treatment before that. And therefore, I use the umbrella analogy. When there are clouds in the sky, do you open the umbrella? No. You put it in your bag. When it starts showering, do you open the umbrella? Yes, you open the umbrella. When the clouds are pouring, downpour, do you open the umbrella? Yes, the umbrella has to be opened. Otherwise, you'll be completely wet. Therefore, have the umbrella, have the protection. But can you have 100% protection? No. Your pant, your sari, your chappal, your shoes, your socks, everything is wet. Only upper part of the body is protected. Unless you had a raincoat. Okay. If you had a raincoat, you're protected with special shoes. With the umbrella, it does only partial protection. That is precisely what the steroids do. Steroids given on day 5, when the disease is taking the dangerous turn, you take that, it suppresses the antibody reaction. It suppresses the release of cytokines. It suppresses the blocking of the blood vessels by damage, suppressing the damage to the lining of the blood vessels. Oh. So steroids are useful. Yes, they are useful. So why can't you give it on the first day? No. On the first day you give, the viruses are multiplying. And if you suppress the antibodies and designed to kill them, the viruses keep multiplying. So it's dangerous to give it in the first 5-6 days, depending on the symptoms. The virus multiplication will continue and you will have a more severe disease. But after day 5 or on day 5, when your fever is coming back or your cough is getting bad, a real bad, deep, can't even lie down straight, or you have a congestion, they'll say there's a congestion, something, it's the problem. Today morning, I had a patient who called up and said, sir, I have some congestion. I said, how much is the fever? Sir, 101. She's on the 5th day. She's having a cytokine storm. I said, please, Malika, you need to start the steroids. But are they the only things to be started? No. If the shower is strong, your pant is going to get wet, your sari is going to get wet. So unless you cover that with some raincoat, you will get wet. So what do? You find a raincoat. Or you have a covering up to protect that. What is that? Anticoagulants. So there are blood clotting normally doesn't happen in the vessels. You give anticoagulants even in presence of a tendency for the disease to cause clotting, it doesn't clot. So you prevented clotting, you prevented the cytokine storm, and you have protection from the disease. So you had the Tokte storm which came up, cyclone, hitting the Western India. Okay, so what did people do? They barricaded their rooms, put up roofs, found shelters for people. People living in hutmans were taken to more secure areas, keeping on this. All that is protection. That protection has to be done before the storm, not after the storm has reached. So a lot of people start getting CT scans done on the 5th day from the first symptom. Unnecessary radiation, no need. It will show you a score of 1 or 2 or no score, 0 score. Don't go by that. You need to wait till it worsens on the 8th or 9th day, and then you take a call. That is the cytokine storm being prevented. Your step has to be before the storm. What does the protocol which you have in the guidelines in various state governments and central government? It is on the 8th day start it. You may be too late. You have to start it. But do you start it without guidance? No. Because steroids are serious complication producing drugs, only under medical supervision. So your doctor has to see your symptoms are there and you need to have this steroid starting along with anticoagulants. A lot of people give aspirin. Aspirin doesn't work. Why? Because a lot of heart attack patients are given aspirin. Does it prevent clotting? Yes, it does prevent clotting by reducing the platelets in your blood. But does it prevent clotting in the veins? It doesn't. Does it prevent clotting in the capillaries? No, it doesn't. It prevents clotting in the arteries. So coronary artery is what you're worried about in heart attack, so you give aspirin. But in this situation, even if you give aspirin, it doesn't help. You have a situation where the patient has blood thinners like aspirin and still he goes on a ventilator. I have a patient in my follow-up I have seen. Only thing, they've got steroids in time, but no anticoagulants, they've gone on a ventilator. Big loss. You have to give both. One alone is useless. You have to give both. Aspirin doesn't work very well. In addition, in the virus infection, usually you see reduction in platelet, exactly as in dengue. Many viral illnesses cause reduction in platelet. So that reduction in platelet should protect them from thrombosis. No, it doesn't. They still have thrombosis. It's a highly thrombogenic phenomenon. So that thrombosis will cause blockage of blood vessels and damage to the lungs. So what looked like pneumonia in the first, on the 5th day of the first symptom, or 6th day or 7th day, whenever you get the X-ray or CT scan done, is not a pneumonia. It looks like pneumonia. True pneumonia happens usually on the 9th, 10th day. Why? Because these blocked alveoli, blocked spaces in the air spaces in the lungs, they get secondarily infected and then you have fever. So fever going like that, going up tells you it's a cytokine storm. You start the steroids, fever will dramatically come down. And it will stay down and you're happy to go home. It comes back, that means there is a infection in the body. You take care of that infection with antibiotics. Don't start antibiotics from day one. Doxycycline, azithromycin, both are antibiotics. Useless on the day 1, useless on day 5. Best required on day 8, 9, not in all patients when they have fever. That is a marker of infection coming on. This is what you are worried about. When to start steroid. 5th day from first symptom, if they have fresh symptoms of fever, most common, cough, severe hacking cough, no phlegm. And third is when they have congestion, feeling of congestion, difficulty in some breathing. Saturation may still be normal. At that time, start steroids, but not steroids alone, but anticoagulants. Once you've taken the steroids and the anticoagulants, then you're ready. Then you're ready to protect yourself from the disease and you're okay. So far, so good. But there's a small number who have secondary bacterial infection on the 9th day from the first symptom. And then that needs to be treated with antibiotics, all under medical support. So you normally see antibodies being generated by body in bulk. There's a waves of this. And these waves take about 4 or 5 days to be ready. So the wave on the 4th day, after the first symptom, there's a new wave of cytokines. So there is, this wave causes worsening of symptoms. So patients that worsen usually are between 10 and 15 days from the first symptom. That is when they get worse. That is when they go on the ventilator. But 5 days from the first symptom, they are only having minor problems and nothing else is there. They are fine, happy coronavirus. But watch for another 5 days because there are some patients in whom there are the second wave that comes up and they have problems. You cover that with steroids, maybe increasing dose a little bit and then bring it down. A little bolus dose and bring it down. Very simple so far. But you miss the first cytokine shower. You miss the second cytokine wave. At the third wave, invariably, patient will die. They will have either a cardiac problem or secondary cardiac problem, or lungs problem, uncontrolled diabetes problem. So this is what you have to remember. Timelines. First symptom, 5 days down the line, first cytokine shower, Start steroids on the 5th, 6th day and follow up. And see how they are faring. There is one small group who after for all is well, they are being weaned off ventilator, or all is well, they have gone home. After 4 weeks, they come back to you with, they'll say palpitations, heart is beating faster, or they'll say heart is beating slowly. Both are telling you need to investigate for a cardiac problem, heart problem. You can get an echo done, an ECG done, and see what is there. Is there sometimes, most of the time, you may not pick up anything, but is there, reports are there, don't ignore it. That actually indicates a third cytokine shower, the levels shooting up. If you get the level of the laboratory test, you'll find them. So do I get laboratory tests? Not routinely on the first day, not routinely on the 5th day, but usually on the 8th, 9th day. That's the time when these people have little fever coming back, little problem coming back. So 8th, 9th day, the second wave is coming on. It's all from the first symptom. Huh? Second wave is coming on, you may need to increase the dose, or you may have new symptoms. Either way, continue steroids and anticoagulants only for a week or 10 days, and the anticoagulants for 3 weeks or so. Why? Because the tendency to clot within our vessels in the lung is part of prothrombotic phenomena, stays for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And this can be risky. Therefore, you need to protect with anticoagulants for 3 weeks, steroids for 1 week, plus minus 2-3 days. That's all by looking at the timeline. So here we have clear timelines. First symptom, 5 days down the line, you have the second dangerous turn, the second symptom day. Fever, cough, and congestion. Not true breathless. Breathless will come on the 7th, 8th day. And that's where the official people are recommending steroids. I'm recommending a little earlier, by 5th day before the storm hits you. If the storm hits you, you don't know what to do. You have to be careful with that. So when you have this situation, first 5 days, second 5 days, third 5 days. After that is the time when you have cardiac arrhythmias, heart rate, rhythm going haywire. And at this stage, you get special investigations done. You may need an ECG, echo, and at times even an MRI may be required to diagnose the nature of the problem in the lungs. But fortunately, it is very rare. So using these timelines, so should we take vitamins? Vitamins help you fight immunity. So you may take vitamins safely, vitamin C, vitamin B, nothing will go wrong. Nothing will go wrong in case there is a problem. You have to look at the steroids as drugs which have to be taken under supervision, and this supervision needs steroids can make diabetics worse. Steroids can make kidney disease patients have electrolyte and saturation loss, the fluid loss, fluid balance is disturbed. So these two things are problematic in steroids. Diabetic and electrolyte and fluid balance are lost. So your physician has to guide you on that. Once you know that, then you work with controlling diabetes better. Usually insulin is required. Controlling fluid and electrolyte balance better, you would probably need admission for that. The next thing is patients who have liver disease, who have piles, bleeding piles, who have peptic ulcers, they may bleed more if you're giving anticoagulants. So they have to be done under supervision. Aspirin doesn't work here because the platelet count in these patients is already low, as I mentioned. You have to give anticoagulants. And these two drugs are the mainstay of treatment. You take care of these two, started at the right time, required only in 15 to 20%, not required in 80%, identified correctly, take steroids for only 1 week, 10 days, and the anticoagulants for 3 weeks. Watch out for cardiac symptoms between 4 to 6 weeks. Watch out for gangrene, which you reported in the newspapers. in the 4 to 6 weeks. That's all autoimmune against the vessels. There are few patients who have loose motions as a symptom. No special treatment is required, no antibiotics required. Most settle on their own. There are few patients who develop loss of taste and smell. Nothing is required for that. It settles on its own. There are few patients who have severe headache. Watch out. They may have COVID-related brain problem. That needs to be checked. And that usually happens in the second, third, fifth day period. And they may become disoriented and they may have problems. Early CT scans may be normal, but subsequent CT scans may show edema or brain swelling. These patients fare poorly. Severe headache is a marker for these patients. Watch out. I've already told about rhythm and rate changes in the heart in the 4 to 6 weeks. So these are timelines you look at and manage these problems. No role for antibiotics in the beginning. No role for those drugs that are given, ivermectin, HCQS, plasma therapy, remdesivir. None of these things really work. Tocilizumab in a small percentage of cases may benefit, especially one marker which is interleukin. Very high in thousands, you may benefit from that. You can't give it if there's an infection because it flares up infection. If you have an infection which is bacterial in the body, steroids can also worsen it. So this whole bug about the fungal infection, black fungus, who has it? Not ordinary patients with good immunity. These are patients who are diabetic, whose control is poor because of infection, or control is poor because of infection also worsens the control of diabetes, not necessarily steroids. Steroids also worsen the control. So you have sugar levels very high in these patients. And anyway, the immunity after infection is anyway down. On top of that, you're given antibiotics. What do the antibiotics do? They kill the normal flora of bacteria and microorganisms in the body. And that gives the chance for the fungus to grow. They're there all over. Where do they come from? They're there all over in your house, in your air. Because if you have a damp wall, fungus grows on it, isn't it? So dampness, warmth, and absence of other organisms which keep it under check gives them an environment for to grow. You have fungus growing. You have to identify it first, early on. And what are the signs? It infects the sinuses. These are very warm, moist places. It's sinuses. It infects the sinuses there. So if you give one steroid and the sugar is there and the control of sugar is bad, you've controlled it poorly. You have sinuses with glucose-rich, moist, warm places, fungus will grow. Leave bread which is moist in the outside area, in warm area. You will have fungus growing it. You will find white mold or black mold or bluish green mold. Those are all fungi. You prevent that by recognizing good control of diabetes, good control of sugar, and looking at early symptoms of that. Swelling is the sign. Pain is a sign. Swelling here in the cheek. Pain in the cheek. One side nose block. Discharge from the nose which is brownish or blackish. Because these spores are black. And therefore it looks as a black fungus. And therefore you have to be aware of that and pick it up early. So it's usually patients in ICUs on ventilators who have this, but there's a small number which goes home. Poor immunity, poor sugar control, post-infective, post-antibiotic, they go home and get the disease. And they'll come back to you with these symptoms. Pain, unilateral, one side. Swelling, one side discharge, black discharge, brown discharge from your nose. Some come with swelling in the eye. That's a little late. Don't wait for that swelling in the eye. Swelling in the eye means the fungus has eaten through the bone at the floor of your eye. Or the fungus has grown to your brain. And that's when you have blurring of vision. That's late. Don't wait for that. When you have early swellings, early symptoms, go, and that's mucormycosis. So each of these give you time to identify, recognize early symptoms. All this can be done in the community level. You don't have to be in the hospital. If you sit at home with the digital sensors, waiting for the sensor to show you a saturation of 92%, you're already late. Our lungs are designed with spare capacity. 2/3 is spare capacity. 1/3 is your working capacity. And that 1/3 can be recognized well before that damage has happened. And you can protect yourself by looking at the timeline. Are the digital sensors useless? No. They'll help you decide on in the hospital. When do you need a nasal catheter? When do you need a mask? When do you need a non-rebreathing mask? When do you need a high flow nasal catheter? When you need ventilator? On a ventilator, is the patient deteriorating? Very useful, but not at home. If it is really going down, you will know it at home also. But I'm not recommending that. You need to decide. So how do you decide at home whether your lung is getting bad? And that can be made out by looking at your breath. So I tell patients, you lean back. Are you sitting on a chair? Yes, sir. Or a sofa? Just lean back. Watch your tummy. With every breath, the tummy rises. So I tell them, tell somebody, is there somebody else with you at home? Yes, sir, my wife is there. Okay, tell your wife to count how many times is your tummy rising in 1 minute. If you count yourself, you may artificially make it faster, or you may artificially make it slower. No, let somebody else count, an onlooker count. In 1 minute, ask them, how many times? Sir, 16 times. Be happy, don't worry, nothing is required. Sir, 20 times. Oh, there is a little warning, yellow sign is going on. 20 to 24, you have the yellow light. 24 to 30, you have orange red sign. 30 plus red sign. So there was a patient of mine who was managing from home, upper class patient. He had a digital sensor. Sir, my oxygen is this much, 95%, 96%. I'm okay. Suddenly, he said one day, he was reading, he says, sir, my saturation is 82%. So I got alarmed. Are you sure? Yes, sir, it is 82%. I said, are you lying down? You don't seem to be breathless. Are you lying down? He said, yes. Count your breath. How many times? It was 17 times. I said, you can't have a saturation of 92%. At that percentage, you have to be breathless. Breathless. And you don't sound to be breathless. So I asked him to take a picture of that and send it to me. So what was by mistake, he counted the pulse rate at the oxygen. It was tense. He suddenly saw 88, 82, and he got 10. That is the saturation. That was the pulse rate. His saturation was still 95. So I reassured him, okay, I made a mistake. So breath count, simple, done at home, can decide on when to go to the hospital. Even when you're on steroids and even when you're on anticoagulants, your decision can still be based on your breath count and not on this. You don't have to buy this from the community. You can manage. To sum up, first symptom, identify that. 5 days from first symptom, there are new symptoms of fever, cough, and congestion. Watch out, that's a warning sign. Under supervision, start steroids and anticoagulants. Continue steroids for 1 week, anticoagulants for 3 weeks. You may still worsen on the 8th, 9th, 10th day because of the second wave of cytokines. At that time, make sure you get to a hospital, seek medical help, and you're in a storm. You may need a bolus dose of steroids. You may need to increase your anticoagulants to an injectable anticoagulant and follow up carefully. Digital sensors, don't rely on them at home, rely on them in the hospital. If it is dropping down, you may need to go on oxygen delivery systems. And when it is still not maintaining on that oxygen delivery system through the mouth or the nose, then you put them on ventilator. Ventilator, expert settings are required. You can't do it yourself. And even I don't know how to manage a ventilator. You have to be trained. Very few doctors that are trained in ventilators well enough, because here the settings are important. So normally, if 2/3 of lung is spare capacity, all the lungs are not open. So when you put the patient on a ventilator, you give a 500 cc inhalation. But if you give that all the time to a patient with a corona lung, you may damage more. That is why the mortality with ventilators were high, because the settings were as for a pneumonia. Pneumonia recruiting the alveoli, the spaces that are required for exchange, can be recruited and safely. But in this, many of those alveoli are damaged alveoli because of the clotting. Giving a high volume can damage them by recruiting ones which should not be recruited, which should be rested. So therefore, the ventilator setting are critically decided. You need to have an expert. That's only possible in a hospital. Okay. Recognize the black fungus before it becomes bad. Don't wait till the eye swelling and the blurring of vision comes. Recognize it before that. Recognize the 4th week or the 15-day plus from the first symptom when they have cardiac symptoms, palpitations. You may need to have a bolus dose of steroids and some special tests to be done. Otherwise, 80% first symptom, 5 days down the line are asymptomatic, nothing happens to the coronavirus. 20% are the ones which go through this sequence. So my friends, using timelines, you can decide when to intervene, when to take the patient to a hospital, when to seek help, when to give medicines, and what medicines at what stage. Antibiotics, no role, except when there is secondary infection. Ivermectin, HCQS, no role. Vitamins, community level people, they may have poor resistance because of poor nutrition. You may supplement safely. B, C, and D. Vitamin B, vitamin C, and vitamin D. Useful. But no role of remdesivir, insufficient evidence for that. There may be some special patients, but by and large, no clear role. Tocilizumab, again, very special situation. By and large, no role. Don't waste your money on these things. Plasma, clear evidence, there's no role. So you're left with just 2 drugs, steroids and anticoagulants, which prevent clotting, and if necessary, appropriate antibiotic started on the 8th day after the first symptom when there is fresh fever. When do I get CT scan? Not on the time of the beginning of the, not at the time of the beginning of the cytokine shower. When they continue to deteriorate, even after 8th day, then you ask for a CT scan, and CT scan will show you extent of damage of the lung. Because can I save all patients? I can't. Some of them, despite genetically determined probably, despite my steroid, despite my anticoagulant, still have a bad thrombotic episode. And they are the ones who deteriorate, go on a ventilator. They are the ones who, if you have started time, giving bolus doses of steroid may help you. But recognize the black fungus in time, recognize the cardiac symptoms on the 4 to 6 weeks, recognize the Kawasaki disease, which happens in rare patients, in children. They have gangrene happening. And by then the testing would be negative. Don't rely on the tests, rely on the symptoms. RT-PCR in this wave of epidemic was negative in 1/3 of patients. 1/3 of patients RT-PCR was negative, but they had corona disease. And in patients that have asthma, in patients that are smokers, in patients that have chronic obstructive airway disease, bronchitis, interstitial lung disease, their cilia that expel the dead viruses. Dead viruses are there after 10 days. They'll still test positive. Don't go back. They say, sir, 4 weeks, I'm still positive. What should I do? No, nothing is going to happen. You're not even infective at 4 weeks. You're not going to have a disease after 4 weeks. You didn't have any symptoms, but you're positive. But that positivity has no meaning because you're not expelling living viruses which will infect others. You're only having dead viruses. So therefore, these patients are the ones smokers. After 2 months also, they may be positive. Don't worry. you're clear. So, understanding the phases of the disease, understanding when what is happening, help you decide at a community level what needs to be done and what's. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Yes, sir. That was indeed a detailed and in-depth explanation by you, sir. I hope that, like me, even our participants have gained much better, much understanding about the COVID